Hello, my name is Gerald Montgomery, and I will be presenting the module for the revised QSP and QSD responsibilities. Our learning objectives today: to understand the new requirements for QSDs and QSPs, to understand the requirements of QSP delegates. We want to understand the training requirements for the various members of the legally responsible person's stormwater compliance team, understand the recertification process for existing QSDs and QSPs, and understand the new authorities for the State Water Board to suspend or rescind QSD and QSP qualifications. Discharger responsibilities for QSPs include that the discharger shall ensure that inspections are performed at a minimum on a weekly basis by a QSP or a trained delegate under the specific control of a QSP, and will include visual inspection, sampling, BMP implementation activities, and other required tasks listed in the SWEP. The discharger shall ensure that a QSP performs the following on-site visual inspections, and these are specific. At least 1 week every calendar month, the QSP must perform the inspection. Other weekly inspections in the month can be delegated to an adequately trained QSP delegate under the specific control of the QSP. Within 72 hours prior to a forecasted qualifying precipitation event, or QPE, the QSD is required to inspect any area of concern and to verify the status of any deficient BMP or other identified issues at the site. If extended forecast precipitation data greater than 72 hours is available from the National Weather Service, then a pre-precipitation event inspection may be done up to 120 hours in advance. The discharger shall ensure that the QSP performs an inspection within 14 days after an NAL exceedance and prior to the submittal of the notice of termination or a change of information for all or part of the site. The discharger shall ensure that the QSP verifies the following requirements: ensures all BMPs required by the SWEP are correctly installed, inspected, and maintained, ensure that track out from the construction site's entrances and exits is effectively controlled, ensure that the SMARTS generated WDID number notification form is posted on site in a location readily available upon request and is current, and verify that hard copy dates match the dates listed in SMARTS for the project. They must also ensure that sampling protocols for stormwater and non-stormwater discharges are understood and correctly performed as described in the SWEP. They shall ensure all project contact information is current for the discharger, that would be the organization, the legally responsible person, the QSD, the QSP, including their names, phone numbers, and email, and that the SWEP is amended by the QSD and updated in SMARTS within 90 days of any change. The QSP must ensure photo documentation of any deficiencies or any problem areas, such as erosion, new sediment deposition, an unauthorized non-stormwater discharge, or failed BMPs or BMPs that need maintenance, and that those are included in the inspection files and readily available upon request by a regulatory inspector. The discharger may authorize a QSP to delegate some of these tasks, including visual inspections, sampling, and/or SWEP and BMP implementation, but that person must be adequately trained. A QSP opting to delegate these tasks to a QSP delegate shall provide the following training based on the guidelines set by the Construction General Permit Training Team. 1, they must have foundational training for all delegates regarding stormwater compliance roles and responsibilities, forecast information, and documentation and reporting procedures, as well as site-specific training regarding those visual inspections, the sampling procedures, and/or SWEP and BMP implementation activities. The discharger shall ensure that the following for QSP delegates occurs. One, the QSP must determine that the delegates can competently perform the visual inspection, sampling, or SWEP and BMP implementation tasks prior to fully delegating that responsibility to the delegate. The QSP must ensure that the delegate's name, email, phone number are noted in the training log reflecting the specific training details and be uploaded as an amendment to the SWEP and SMARTS before the delegate starts performing these tasks. The QSP must ensure that the delegate has a prescribed process to record and report back issues within 24 hours when there is a corrective action identified. The delegate cannot perform the QSD and QSP required inspections that are specifically prescribed in the CGP. The QSP inspections are in section V.D.2, and the QSD inspections required are in section V.C.4. Now, when it comes to QSDs, the discharger shall retain a QSD from the beginning of the project through the project completion notice of termination approval. The QSD is required to assess how construction activities will affect erosion control and sediment transport, as well as the discharge of other pollutants in stormwater runoff in the SWEP design. The QSD is required to revise the SWEP via amendment to address potential or actual problems identified by visual inspections, sampling data, QSP observations, and the like. A QSD is required to include the SWEP in the SWEP, the name, email, and phone number of all QSPs and QSP delegates. The discharger shall ensure that a QSD performs the following specific on-site visual inspections within 30 days of construction activity starting on site, within 30 days of a discharger replacing the QSD with another QSD, twice annually between August and October, and then again between January and March, within 14 calendar days after a numeric action level exceedance, and within the time period requested in writing by the water board. Now, the QSD may perform the work of a QSP. Becoming a QSD or a QSP. All QSPs and QSDs shall have a fundamental knowledge of erosion and sedimentation theory and processes, as well as best management practices, including installation and maintenance to control pollutants in stormwater discharges. A California licensed professional engineer or geologist may self-certify as a QSD. A person can obtain a QSP or QSD certification through CASCA by doing the following: complete one of the approved underlying training certifications and pass the related exam, complete the QSP and or QSD training course and pass the appropriate exam, and then register as a QSD or a QSP through the Office of Water Programs website. To become a QSP applicant shall currently possess at least one of the following prerequisites: either a CPESC, a CPSWQ, a CESWI, a SciSec, and this is a new one, a construction management degree from an accredited four-year institution that includes coursework that covers the underlying principles of erosion and sediment control and practices of reducing pollution in stormwater. And this is a new one, any prerequisite course approved by the State Water Board Division of Water Quality Deputy Director. Now, becoming a QSD, the QSD applicant shall currently possess at least one of the following prerequisites: a California licensed professional engineer, a California licensed landscape architect, a professional hydrologist, a certified professional in erosion and sediment control, a certified professional in stormwater quality, and a new one, any prerequisite course approved by the State Water Board Division of Water Quality Deputy Director. To remain in good standing and to maintain your QSP and QSD, QSPs and QSDs registered through CASCA shall annually complete continuing education on site assessment techniques, BMP design and implementation, inspection techniques, or monitoring approaches. The QSP and QSDs have to complete 6 hours of continuing education on those topics. Must complete these requirements in whole or part through the continuing education and other related activities through as outlined by the certifying organizations. Complete the renewal process every 2 years, which includes a review of materials addressing the permit implementation updates, clarifications, and experiences. And initially, you must complete a self-guided review and pass an exam on the new permit prior to September 1 of 2023. Now, pre-existing QSPs and QSDs. A QSP or QSD who has maintained a valid certification as of the effective date of this general permit, which is September 1 of 2023, shall remain in good standing. Existing QSPs and QSDs certified through CASCA shall, prior to the expiration date of their individual certificate, certify that they have maintained a valid underlying certification and complete that recertification, review, and/or refresher training through the CASCA renewal process, and again, complete the self-directed training and successfully pass the exam by September 1 of 2023. Legacy project impact and timing. So projects permitted that actually get coverage and are assigned a WDID number after September 1 of 2023 will be under the 2022 permit. Legacy projects that will be grandfathered in. So if you have a project that was permitted prior to September 1st of 2023, it will be under the 2009 CGP for up to 2 years. After September 1st of 2025, all projects must operate under the 2022 CGP. And so the legacy projects will need to be updated at that time. The impact to QSPs and QSDs is that they will need to understand project by project which CGP requirements are applicable. The QSP and QSD prerequisite program qualifications. The State Water Board's Division of Water Quality Deputy Director may approve the qualification and additional prerequisite courses for QSP and QSD certifications. Individuals may recommend additional prerequisite courses by emailing the address. The course curriculum shall meet an acceptable level of training and must require continuing education. And the construction general permit training team will review any recommended course and provide feedback and recommendations to the water quality deputy director. If the course is approved, it will be listed at this website seen on the screen. The State Water Board's executive director or a regional water quality control board executive director may suspend any QSP or QSD certification and require additional training as a condition of reinstallment if they find in writing that the QSP or QSD lacked adequate knowledge or training to effectively perform the duties as prescribed by the CGP, and or rescind any QSP or QSD certification if, after providing notice and an opportunity to be heard, they find that the QSP or QSD has willfully or negligently caused or allowed a violation of the CGP, submitted false or misleading information to the state or a regional water board, used fraud or deception in any way, or failed to use reasonable care and good judgment. Any individual whose QSP or QSD certification has been rescinded may request to the state water board to review their case. Any request for review must be received by the state water board no later than 30 days after the date the individual received written notice that their certification had been rescinded. So in summary, QSDs have specific inspection requirements that may not be delegated. QSPs have specific inspection requirements that may not be delegated. QSPs can only delegate work to QSP delegates who have been trained, and that requires very specific training by the QSP. They must work under the QSP's direction, and they must be named in the SWEP. QSPs are responsible for certain tasks in this new permit. The WDID information must be posted on site. Many builders already do this, but it is a new requirement for all projects. QSDs and QSPs must complete the recertification process to remain in good standing. Current projects are going to be grandfathered in per the legacy project criteria. And the Water Board can suspend or rescind a QSP or QSD's credentials, and they can also require them to obtain additional training. Thank you. This concludes the module on the revised QSP and QSD responsibilities.
Hello, my name is Russell Foster, and I will be presenting this module on the QSP delegate. So the QSP delegate isn't necessarily a new idea. In the 2009 CGP, it did allow for individuals trained by the QSP to perform certain tasks like inspections. However, it wasn't an official designation, nor were there any requirements on those people that were trained by QSPs or working under the supervision of QSPs with regards to what tasks they could perform. The new 2022 CGP has added the position of a QSP delegate to part of the stormwater team and has assigned requirements for how the delegates are to be trained. So in this module, we'll be covering who can be a delegate, what training is required to be a QSP delegate, and then kind of the minimum understanding for that delegate must have in order to perform their QSP related duties. So who can be a delegate and what duties can they perform? The discharger or the permittee can authorize a QSP to delegate certain aspects of their responsibilities like visual inspections, sampling, even data submitting, those type of things to a delegate. But that delegate now has to be trained by the QSP to perform these tasks and have specific training. The CGP, the 2022 CGP, specifically identifies as an example of who could be a delegate: superintendents, project managers, foremen, people like that. So I think they're looking for people who are on the site more often than not. The QSP delegate must complete 2 types of training in order to perform that work. First is a foundational training, and second is site-specific training. The important thing to know about these 2 trainings is that the foundational training is something that only needs to occur 1 time. Site-specific training is just that, it's site-specific and would have to be conducted for every site that a person was to be a QSP delegate on. The foundational training is not maybe what you might initially think of foundational training, meaning maybe erosion theory or, BMP maintenance requirements, those type of things. The foundational training is more based on requirements that are in the 2022 CGP, and they're specifically that the QSP delegate needs to understand the roles and responsibilities of those responsible for compliance. What I often call the stormwater team, meaning the discharger, the LRP, the QSD, the QSP. In addition to that, they need to understand the forecast information and where to obtain that information properly as required by the 2022 CGP. And then they also have to have understanding of what documentation and reporting procedures are required. The site-specific training is just that they need to be made aware of specific requirements with regards to whatever job site they are working on as related to the site-specific stormwater plan that has been developed for that job site. This training is to be documented in the SWIP as well and kept as part of that record. So what does the delegate need to know about the other stormwater team members' roles? The discharger is the permit holder as defined in attachment B of the CGP. And it's the discharger's responsibility to oversee all site activity and work that is done by the QSDs, the QSPs, and the QSP delegates. So I guess the understanding should be by the QSP delegate that the LRP or the discharger is the ultimate boss at the job site with regards to stormwater compliance. Some of the discharger's responsibilities that the QSP delegate should be aware of. There's obviously a long list of responsibilities for the discharger, but these are just a few of the things that the QSP delegate should be aware of in order to conduct or perform their role at the job site. They need to make sure or understand that anything that changes at the job that would require a change to the SWIP must be made through SMARTS within 30 days. They also should understand that personnel serving as QSDs and QSPs have active certificates, and something that's new in the 2022 CGP, they should be know that the WDID number must be posted at the job site. And if they're going to be ones that are at the job site regularly, it could definitely be one of their responsibilities to make sure that that posting doesn't disappear, because we know that on construction sites, there is a lot of dynamic things going on and signage often can get damaged or disappear. With regards to the legally responsible person and their responsibilities, the QSP delegate should be aware that they are the one that certifies the permit documents within the SMART system. They can designate a duly authorized representative to certify within the system. So if the QSP delegate was to be added as a data submitter by one of these people, they would need to understand that it is that LRP or that duly authorized representative that are the ones that certify anything that they would submit in SMARTS. With regards to the qualified SWIP developer, they are responsible for the design of the SWIP and any amendments to the SWIP. So if there are things that happen at the job site that require a revision to the SWIP document, the QSP designee would understand that the QSD is the one that would perform or make those switches. And also they should understand that the QSD can perform the work of a QSP. So if a QSD were to come to the site to do the work of the QSP, that is authorized. With regards to the QSP, the delegate should understand that they are responsible for the implementation of the SWIP, and they're the person that the delegate is directly assisting. And so it's the QSP's responsibilities that the QSP delegate should be most familiar with. They're required to perform the on-site inspections, some which may be delegated, some may not, and we'll go over that in just a few minutes. They also must verify that the BMPs have been installed correctly, are inspected and repaired as needed. And as I mentioned already, that the WID number is posted someplace visible. The QSP must also train that QSP delegate. So the delegate must understand that they need to have the foundational and site-specific training that we have mentioned. The QSP is responsible for determining that the QSP delegate is competent to perform the tasks that are assigned. And one thing that is new in the 2022 CGP is that there must be an established system for QSP delegates to report issues to the QSPs within 24 hours of discovery. So that communication line must be something that is set up between the QSP and the QSP delegate. As far the QSP delegate themselves, they must be able to perform and understand all the tasks associated with doing inspections, sampling, if they're charged with that, with the BMP implementation and maintenance needs, as well as data submitting if they are given that responsibility as well. The forecast information that's important for the QSP delegate to know about will be discussed much more thoroughly in the module about the qualifying precipitation events. But what the QSP delegate needs to know is that the National Weather Service is where that information is to be obtained. They cannot channel surf for forecasts that they like. They must get that information from this one source. Documentation and reporting procedures as related to the foundational training. The QSP delegate must understand that inspections are to be done weekly and that there are also storm event related inspections for daily and for post qualifying storm inspections or qualifying precipitation events, I should say. And then on the documentation, there is a whole list of things that need to be included that the QSP delegate will need to understand. Usually, if they're using a site inspection form, most of this information will be on the site inspection, whether it's an electronic form or a paper form. But the QSP delegate should have an understanding of what information is required to be recorded on the inspection forms each and every time they do an inspection. For additional information with regards to the QSP delegate and the foundational training, you can refer to these sections on the screen for the roles and responsibilities, the forecast information, and the documentation and reporting. But the QSP delegate must understand these things. And again, this foundational training is only required to be completed by a delegate one time. If they have documentation of that training, they would not need to do it as they move from site to site. That's different, obviously, with the site-specific training. Site-specific training is something that a QSP delegate would have to do before performing work at any new job site that they are working at. One of the things that they'll have to understand is the visual inspections and how often they're required and who can and cannot perform those visual inspections. The QSP delegate must be trained on when to conduct these inspections, the weekly inspections, the once every 24 hours during inspections, and inspections following a QPE. They cannot conduct inspections that are required by someone else. So the QSP is specifically required to perform the pre-rain event inspections. Therefore, a QSP delegate cannot perform those, and the delegate must know that. They also cannot perform any of the required QSD inspections. And additionally, the QSP is required to perform at least one inspection monthly, and they could not substitute themselves in for that one monthly inspection that the QSP is required to do themselves. If they are to collect samples as part of their responsibilities, if they are at a risk 2 or 3 level site, they must understand as part of the site-specific training, the location to collect those samples, proper use of the meters used to take those samples, and proper collection and handling of the samples, especially if one is to be sent to a laboratory. The QSP delegate must be trained on how to identify when there is a exceedance. They need to understand the numbers in the chart on the screen and that they have to notify the QSP and the QSD if there is an exceedance of the NTU or the pH totals. The QSP delegate also needs to be trained on when to initiate non-visible pollutant sampling requirements. If a non-visible pollutant sampling event were to happen at the job site, meaning that their site has a leak or a spill or breach or malfunction of a BMP that is designed to contain a non-visible pollutant, they would have to understand that that may trigger a requirement for sampling. Delegates should also be instructed on the site-specific SWIP, what BMPs have been selected for deployment at the site, the proper installation techniques and maintenance requirements for those BMPs to function properly, and construction site schedules. Additionally, they should understand where the perimeter of the site is, the discharge locations, sampling locations, construction site entrance and exit locations, how scheduling, how construction schedule could affect the BMP deployment, and then housekeeping practices as well, liquid waste management locations, solid waste management, sanitary stations. All of these things are important for the QSP delegate to know and understand at each and every site they work at, which is why the site-specific training is to be conducted at each site. So, in summary, what does the QSP delegate need to know and what tasks can they perform? The delegate has training requirements. They have to understand the roles and responsibilities of the whole stormwater team as it relates to the work that they will do. They have to understand the inspection frequency requirements. They should understand proper sampling techniques as well as site-specific BMP requirements for installation and maintenance of the BMPs. Thank you very much. This concludes the module on the QSP designee.